Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today.
I don't want to say there's a barrier to it, but some people see the British Firefighter Challenge, they think it's like invite only, or like it's some elite group of people and you have to be picked for it. But the more like it grows, the more people see it, I think people realise that it's not all about winning, is it? You know, doing that course and you're able to complete the course within that 6-minute time frame, for me, it shows that you're fit and ready for the job, regardless of your gender. If you can do it in that time, like, we're doing the right thing.
Whatever your standard is, whatever time you get, everyone's valued in that event and encouraged to do the best and celebrate it. So that's what's so nice about it.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together. Hey folks, before we get into today's episode, just wanted to introduce you once again to our mobile application, Drillbook. Now, if you listen to the podcast, you're probably the sort of person that likes to develop themselves. Now, Drillbook is built to be the home of training ideas for drill grounds all across the world. It's a library of content built by firefighters for firefighters. It's for training ideas, it's for incident debriefs, radio messages. We've got if code templates in there, knots and lines, quick reference guides, interview questions, answers, and guidance. So go in there, check it out. If you want to develop yourself, if you're looking to develop a firefighter on your station, head into the App Store or click the notes in the podcast links below. So, I want to start by asking about what the hell went on at the end of it, because I'm looking at the results now. Jack, you finished with 2:14. That is just redonkulous. But as everyone will have seen, you pretty much passed the finish line at exactly the same time, Matt. But you hit a few of the things in the middle though. So how did the points work out in the end, Matt?
I don't really know, to be honest with you. I got a 2-second penalty for the hose. So I'm not gonna lie to you.
I didn't know that.
That little box, I am fucking shit at. Last year I was horrific with that mat. I just couldn't get it on it. And this year, apparently, I got it jammed between the sort of railing and the box. If that makes sense. It wasn't actually.
Oh, it was like on an angle.
I think so, yeah. That's
No
what
way.
I gathered. So it's clumsy, mate. That's what story of my life.
Well, you started stronger with the pull, but I think Jack was faster because you got longer arms. And like when I was trained on the pull erosion, I'm doing it. I'm like, get the full extension because it saves on 2 extra ones. But Jack's like a little Rottweiler. I think he was faster, but obviously he wasn't getting as long a pull.
I missed a couple of the first two as well, to be fair.
Did you drop the line on the first one? Yeah, it was a slippery start on that one. But what people won't know is when you're doing that. I mean, I remember when I the last time I went against John, I was absolutely livid because he'll say it's the only time he's ever beat me, but he didn't fucking beat me. But I had my foot when they do the replay, the really slow replay. My foot is on the step when just as the whistle goes, and that's it. That's the penalty. And I was like, do you think it makes a massive difference, that first step? I mean, obviously I'm pandering because I'm just being a bit.
I don't know.
The argument is, I mean...
No one likes a penalty, do they, really?
No, it's not. But, but you must have had another penalty then, Matt.
No, I fell over, mate. Did you not see?
Oh, shit.
that was quite a big penalty.
Well, to be fair...
We'll talk about that again, shall we?
Let's cycle it right back because, Jack, don't give people a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of your birth into this because you were almost in the fucking realms of smashing it the first time you ever did it.
Yeah.
You had an absolute mare at the end of the course.
Serious mare, yeah. I know exactly how it feels, if not slightly worse, because I'm pretty sure that I was about 5 to 7 seconds.
Mate, you were going to blitz everybody.
Yeah, ahead of the
first time out the gate.
And I stacked it about 2 foot from the line, and then it took me about 10 seconds to get me over the line.
He just scrambled to the end of it.
And funnily enough, after that, I had a 2-year break. I was not coming back.
It was one of those ones where it was like watching a monkey fuck a football when you were trying to get it over the last 10 feet of the line. It was like a mad scramble.
Yeah, that was not good.
How old are you both now? Just for people, because it says the category is 18 to 29.
I'm 29 now, so I'll be 30 next year.
Right. So you're right on the cusp. But when we look at the times, mind you, you're going, who's Martin Reppelbach? Oh, I know Martin. Shit, Martin was 2:15.
Yeah, that's the Austrian guy.
Tell you, the Austrians absolutely cleaned it up this year. I think that's the biggest Austrian turnout we've had at the BFC.
Oh, yeah. To be honest, he ran at like 10 in the morning, and I think everyone was thinking, well, the only title up for grabs now is the British, because his time seemed ridiculous. Yeah.
They weren't ready for the baker.
Me and Jack stood there at the end and we're like talking, and he's like, "Do you think you got 2:15?" I'm thinking, I ain't got fucking 2:15.
The only reason we got that time is because we knew we needed to beat each other. That's the only reason.
That's a factor, isn't it? And I think, to be fair to the BFC lot, they're really good at matching people up. It does require a little bit of sector knowledge to get people to push themselves right over the line. But John ended up going against Aaron Childs. Aaron's a dark horse, because he's taller than me, but he's lighter. So he's really fast, but he's super explosive.
Up the stairs.
I think there's more in him, I think he's got, and I know he won the 35 to 39, but he only just won it. I think there's more in him. I don't think he, with all due respect, I don't think he trains enough for it. Not like he's not fit, but he's like how when I used to do it. I never used to train the specifics of the events. I just used to rely on being really fit. How much do you boys put into the actual events training?
To be fair, this year I had surgery a month before the competition. So
was that the section?
Yeah, mate. Can you tell? It's worked quite well.
That's all right. I didn't know what I was doing, him, her, or she, or whatever we're supposed to be calling you now.
I'm a they now, mate. I'm a they.
Okay, sorry.
I had surgery, and that kind of, up until that point, I was being a bit soft on myself, really. And then I had the surgery, everything was okay, and then I was kind of like, right, shit, I need to actually get back to it. So task-specific stuff, so like rolling hose again, doing everything, making sure that I was on top of that, because I knew that I didn't have the time to go out and build a bigger engine in terms of like make myself any fitter, but I knew I had time just to try and be a little bit more technically savvy, a bit more, if that makes sense, just a bit more better at everything. Sort of the one thing I kind of noticed is when I go to the casualty drag, I like flip it up and like give myself a second or two and then grab it and go. Yeah. And it's one of them things I've just practiced literally doing it in one motion, like flipping, putting my arms under and going. If that makes sense. Just little things like that I thought I can chop and change a little bit of time.
Rather than, most people flop it over and then drop into a squat and mess about, giving it a big spoon for a minute or two.
You gained time on me there when you did that. I watched the video a couple of times. You literally just flip it, pick it up, and you're gone, aren't you?
Yeah. And it's just little things like that. It sounds daft, but like that's a second or two. Like when I watched the one back from Hull, like I'm proper messed up with my grip on the casualty. Like I went, instead of like linking arms underneath it and like banding onto my own arms, I like went under the armpits, and that went to shit. So
who is it? The German guy that picks it almost completely off the floor and doesn't get any drag with it.
Yeah, they changed the rules this year. Kaiser's feet couldn't leave the ground.
I should probably know that.
So then my missus over saying, "Oh, that's you do that." I'm like, I don't do that. I don't think I've ever done that. But I look back on the whole stuff, and Jack pointed out to me as well on some of the relays. I'm like fucking taking off backwards, like launching myself, and I'm like horizontal going through the air of the casualty. So maybe I did do that a few times.
Well, Jack's vertically challenged, so I don't think he couldn't get it off the floor if he tried. So, he's trying to bring it down to earth.
He get the shoulders, he'd be fine.
What surgery did you have, mate? If it's all right asking.
I had laser eye surgery.
Oh, so it's not like you had surgery on your back.
No, God, no. But I couldn't do any lifting. That was the thing. I couldn't get my eyes, mate. The list of things I couldn't do. I couldn't get sweat in my eyes. I couldn't lift anything heavy. I basically couldn't do anything for a month. Like either basically 2 weeks prior, 2 weeks after.
Really? Why is it just because you don't put pressure through your eyes or something?
Yeah, straining. So the big part.
I blew some blood vessels in my eyes back in stupid squatting days. I really fucked my eyes up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and it's that kind of stuff. Obviously, the surgery I had was like keyhole, so there's no kind of flaps, there's no moving parts, but there's still a risk of infection. So I couldn't get, I couldn't, for example, like bathing, going for a shower, I couldn't get water in my eyes for a week. So
Is
little things
laser eye
like that,
surgery
because obviously
something wears off over time? Don't people say you have to have it done a couple of times, or have you like spent a lot of money and got it done in a super Gucci? You got like
it
nice eyes.
depends. I mean, I spent a lot of money. I'm not gonna lie. I went to a place on Harley Street. So my prescription was pretty horrific beforehand. Like if I didn't wear contacts or glasses, I like needed a guide dog. Basically, it was that level of bad. I just got sick of wearing contacts. So like doing 224 and like sleeping in contacts is just no good.
I need to get laser eye surgery at some point, I think.
Mate, it's worth having. The things they say, like it doesn't wear off, but say, for example, like because my eyes are pretty shit to start off with, in like 10, 15 years, I might get like a shift in my prescription. So I might have a slight prescription in like 10 years from now. But I would have.
It's worth it, though, isn't
it?
it? Like you say, when you're this age now, when you're going to be having all these adventures and doing all this stuff, you're in your prime. It's like, just get it done.
Yeah, mate, it's made a huge difference. Like going back on shift now, don't get me wrong, I didn't have anything major. It wasn't like I was getting my back reconstructed.
No.
But it was enough of a thing where I was like, if this goes bad, everything's fucked, basically.
How was your training running up to it, Jack? Because why did you take 2 years out? Just because you didn't want to turn up again and look stupid?
Oh, to be fair, I think 2020 was that COVID year that it stopped.
Oh yeah.
So that was like a break anyway, and then it was Morton, and I just thought, I don't know. I wasn't motivated to do it. I was probably still a bit like not sure whether I want to risk being that Mardy again after the event.
You read the talk on it.
And then then it was 2022. I thought I'll go for it again.
Because I remember talking to you back in that time, and you were like going elbow deep into golf. People won't know you're actually really good at golf. Like almost you could actually do it as a profession, kind of.
Yeah, realistically, that was why I didn't do it, because I was just obsessed playing golf. So I thought my fitness had gone right, like in a downward spiral.
Down, but you do need a different. You're a bit too stacked for golf again now. Have you jacked it in or something?
No. Well, yeah, I'm not playing. I'm not a member of a club anymore, but I still play with my mates and that. But it's not like a priority of mine. Whereas it was like an obsession for a bit. So it was kind of like if I could fit the gym in, I'd go and do some weights, and that was it. So for 2 years, really, I just smashed the golf, and then it wasn't until 2022 I thought. I think I was getting a bit bored of golf, and I thought I'll get back into my fitness. Well, I say fitness. I was only really into the weights, and then training a bit of specific stuff for the Firefighter challenge. Because when I went in 2022, I wasn't expecting to come away with the gold at all.
Oh, fuck off! Yes, you were.
No, I wasn't. I was.
Oh yeah, I just surprised me. I didn't realize everyone else would be so slow. You know.
Whereas this year there was a bit more pressure. Obviously, you won it once. You want to perform then.
So, you put the watch on eBay yet? What are you doing with it? You give it to the missus?
No, I've them both in the boxes still. I don't know which one I'm going to wear.
So for people that are kind of unfamiliar, so the British, because I always do this, I always go straight down the fucking rabbit hole. So the British Firefighter Challenge, when did it start? I can't remember when it started now. First one was in Leicestershire, wasn't it? Was it? No. What service did the first one?
I don't think it was Leicester, you know.
No, I don't think it was Leicester. I should really fucking know this.
It was 8 years. I think this was the 8th year, because I remember them saying something about it.
It's come along a long ass way, but I mean, it wasn't the first one. I was having a bit of a. Have any of you? So, what ones have you guys done? Neither of you done TFA? Have you?
No,
I've not.
Oh, mate, you boys should get out there and do that sort of stuff. I'm surprised you've not done something like that yet, Jack, because you kind of roll in them circles now. You know, with the budgies. And Lee and people like that, Globetrotters.
It's kind of the cost associated with it, though. Like, if you're going to do a couple of those, you've got a missus and you want to go on holidays as well. You know, we're only firefighters at the end of the day. To be spending, tickets, they're not cheap events, are they? You've got to go out there, hotels, 3 or 4 days. It's a lot of commitment to go and do them, and you don't really get any support from the fire service, do you? So
the UK, look, you really got to have sponsors and stuff to do it. I mean, me and Matt were talking just before we came on about Joachim Posantz, for people that don't know him, 2 times world champion, 2 times European champion, and 11 times German champion. I think that's just because he's limited as to what he can actually put in his Instagram profile, because he's got a shitload more than that.
Words.
Yeah. But do you know Jared? Do you know Jared Johnson?
No.
Have a look at him on Instagram. He's got 50-something thousand followers. I've had him on the podcast a few times, and he's 9 times Firefighter Challenge world champion. And
I think I do. The American guy.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yes,
he does the whole
yeah.
coaching thing as well. He's got
Yeah.
Fit for Fire.
Yeah, he's absolutely rapid, isn't he? He's like 190.
Yeah, and he only does, not only, but like he only does that. That's his thing. And obviously he coaches people and all that sort of shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude's an absolute beast. And his dad, have either of you heard of the Lion's Den?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Lion's Den is an American one where the Firefighter Combat Challenge, they've got a shitload of sponsors, but basically a sub 100. So if you do their course, and this is what I'm going to ask you about different lengths of courses in a minute as well. Any male competitor, regional or world championship, less than 100 seconds, so a minute 40 seconds, then they get into the Lion's Den. And basically you get Lion apparel. You get like a varsity jacket and a helmet sticker and a label pin and all this sort of stuff. And everyone talks about, not everyone obviously, but a lot of people in the Firefighter Challenge sector talk about getting into the Lion's Den. And you can do it at all ages as well. I think the over 60s, if you get in less than 4 minutes, you get one of the challenges. And when I look at that, because I mean, like the oldest guy, like Rob Green, we had him on the podcast. He was less than 3 minutes still.
Really?
Rob Green, do you guys still think you'll be doing this at 55? That's twice your age nearly.
I'd like to think so, but it's impressive, isn't it?
Fucking seriously, I don't know if I'll be. I mean, I'm waning now. All of the roids and the injuries are fucking catching up with me a bit early, to be honest with you. Body's holding with threads at some point in time.
I'd like to say I will be doing it, but after this weekend, it's taking about 4 days for my legs and my knees not to be totally mangled. So probably not. If there's a wheelchair version.
That's why I didn't. So I'm doing the National Three Peaks 24-hour thing. I've never done it. I always wanted to do it. I'm doing it tomorrow. And I wanted to do that. And I thought, if I do anything explosive on my legs, I will twang something. Do you know what I mean? It's the uncontrolled side of the BFC that scares me sometimes now. And if I've got other things lined up, I'm just like, fuck, I'm going to go and host that. But I was speaking to one of our mutual friends, and I won't say who, whilst I was at the challenge. And I was in two mindsets because I was kind of annoyed. So I was a little bit like, fair point. I was saying to him about like still being able to do this when I'm really old, and talking about like testosterone therapy and like I've made mistakes when I was younger and I'm stupid. And the dude was just like, well, you should have never done it. And I was like, yeah, I agree. But like, fucking, we make mistakes. I mean, shit. Who didn't make a mistake in their 20s? I don't justify what I did and all that sort of jazz. And that's why I talk to about it. I'm just honest about it because I wouldn't suggest anybody does it. I've been there and done it. But I think that loads of people do make those mistakes. And looking at the longevity in the sport, whether you've decided to be an ultra marathon runner and all that sort of stuff. I mean, Jack, you're doing loads of CrossFit now, and you're doing loads of big lifting. How long do you think your body can sustain that? Because I think people have got like a 10 or 15-year window to really lift heavy steel because your body's not designed to do it.
Yeah, I think you might be right there because I've only been doing it 2 years now, and I'm even driving in the car more than sort of half an hour, my knees start aching, and I'm like, that's
mate,
not.
Mate, I'm serious. You've got to be so on that because that was, and I know you don't take all the crap that I used to take, but it was like I had what I look back at as tendinopathy in my knees for about a year or so after I'd stopped doing all the 300 kilo squats. And that was when I was going on the SAS show. I was feeling it because I was doing loads of running with rucks on my back and all this sort of stuff to get used to what we'd be doing on the show. And I could feel it in my knees. I was icing them every day. But I just thought, I've got sore knees because I haven't done loads of running. And then it was just an innocuous little twist of the knee in a bad position. And the whole freaking tendon snapped. Yeah. And, it just shot up the leg. And that's what I'm saying to people. Like, you've been doing it 2 years. Do either of you think CrossFit's amazing? I think what CrossFit's done for the sector, for fitness in general, is like made it accessible to women, all sorts of stuff. I think that sort of timed circuit fitness stuff, has brought a lot of Olympic lifting into the common sector, which I think is a great thing. But I'm not sure how sustainable it is for many, many years. You can't seem to find any of them who are either not injured to fuck or taking a world full of drugs that's keeping them going. So I wonder how long, like you say, Jack, you doing it naturally, you've been 2 years in and you're already worried about your knees. How long do you think you'll do something like that? And how far do you want to kind of take it?
I don't know. Like, you do have to be careful, don't you? I mean, you have to try and look after yourself, do your mobility, make sure you warm up properly. But I think if you do get competitive with it, I don't think you do have a massive lifespan doing it. We're not designed to be doing heavy squats, heavy cleans, snatches. Like, all of those positions are totally unnatural.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't imagine throwing heavy weights around is actually good for you.
Plus the fact that you have to sustain such a high level of gymnastics if you actually want to do it to even the regional level. You're then putting your body into, hyperextension ranges of movement. I mean, we had Zach Blacklight. In fact, Zach was at the event. Did you meet Zach?
Yeah, I've met Zach in Welsh as well.
Zach's a wicked guy. He had a stroke the other year, and not like a nice stroke. He had a bad stroke, lost the ability to talk and walk and all that sort of shit. And he had it from doing handstand walks. It basically stretched an artery or something like that, and it caused a rupture. And I'm sure I'm bastardizing that. It was probably something a bit more technical. But he was saying, like, you have to kind of try and pick a lane, because people that are really good at powerlifting or really good at strongman or really good at whatever have picked that lane, and they accept the fact that they don't have the gymnastic range. Whereas something like CrossFit is trying to tick all the boxes, and and it's the competitive aspect to it. That's why I stopped training at a box, because I enjoyed all the workouts. But I'm just too much of an addict. I can't control myself. I would go sprinting against everybody else and just fuck myself up.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
It's a 50-50, isn't it, I think sometimes, like, you need that motivation is great if you kind of know where your limit is, if that makes sense. Like, if you're a relatively well-trained individual, you know that how much you can squat. And if someone says, right, we're going to bang out 100 kilos for like 10 reps, 10 sets, gym and volume training, you're thinking, fucking hell, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But if
we're going to do it in 20 minutes. Ready, go.
Yeah. That's when you kind of, I think the more experienced you are lifting, you have a better understanding of what you can and can't do. But the thing is, over CrossFit, if you've got like novices that have never done any lifting before ever, that is like, Christ,
That's the secret. That's the iceberg illusion, isn't it? You see someone doing that, and the ones that are really, really good at it, you don't see the fact. I used to train at Loughborough. Did you ever train at Loughborough University, Jack? I know you used to live around that area.
Yeah, I've been there a couple of times.
Yeah. So, but a lot of people there have got 10 years worth of powerlifting experience before they've ever done any other stuff. So you've got such a massive iceberg of experience before you then go into it. And like you were saying, Matt, when you get the Joe Public going, oh, I've just seen it on Instagram, I'm going to go and do some fucking overhead squats, and you're like, dude, you need a base. You just need to learn how to body weight squat with the center of balance. Just hold a 5 kilo kettlebell above your head and try and keep it there whilst you squat. That's hard enough.
It's little things like when I was in my degree in S&C and that, and you're kind of working with like young until they're like 16. A lot of the stuff like that is literally just with a barbell or a broomstick, working through movement patterns. So getting used to overhead squatting, getting used to hip hinging, getting used to squatting, because they, like everything, if you've got really, really good form and can move really well, you've got really good sort of proprioception, you know where your body is in different movements. When I was like personal training, that's all. Start low bar squatting so I can lift more weight. And it's like, yeah, great. You can lift more weight because you're putting yourself in a more advantageous position to lift that weight. Yeah. But if you're like an athlete and you want to be athletic, high bar squatting is so much more efficient, because that positioning of your like torso to sort of shift is more likely what you're going to encounter when you're like sprinting or you're jumping. Like it just, and that's what the balance of that between like, I do just want to lift it like athletic and sort of, I don't know the word functional, but move a decent weight through a full range that's got better crossover to life.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people don't actually want it for a functional ability, because you do most of your training at home, don't you, Matt? Do you actually go to any gyms now? And I say that with respect, because you go do you even train, bro? Do you even lift?
Yeah, funny story. So like last year, Zoe was like, I want to get into CrossFit. So I said, oh, no worries, we joined a CrossFit gym. We're doing that for a bit, and then just the way kind of the timings were for like shifts, my shifts and Zoe's shifts, like it wasn't the best.
Mate, I would never let your missus go to a CrossFit gym. She would get scooped up. There'd be people hanging off her after the class, trying to chat her up.
Yeah, she's pretty quick. No, it was in some respects, well, the times we used to go. So if we went together, it'd be like there's a 9:30 class. So like on like nights, in between nights or like days off, not so bad. But it was like mums, bums, and tums. I'm like the only bloke there, and it's a bit like, after a while, it's a bit like, yes, there's a workout, and there's a leaderboard, and like the 6 a.m. and the 7 a.m. classes, they like you'd have their weights or their times for the WODs, which was great. But I'm not actually competing against anybody. That makes sense. There's no like push of someone being there.
Side.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's where open gym is probably the best thing in CrossFit. Once you've been doing CrossFit for a couple of months, you kind of want to drop out of the everyday WODs, because with the greatest respect, they're a bit of they're a sheep dip, aren't they? And you can find yourself
Yeah.
doing the same shit every day. And I'm like, there's nobody else think we're overtraining shoulders. It's fucking
Yeah,
overhead
yeah.
pressing 5 days a week. I'm gonna
So
fucking blow out my rotator cuff doing this.
when you get like, like once you've sort of got the movements down and you've got the weights up a little bit, the hour session, the warm-ups aren't enough. You can't build, it will like be built to a heavy squat. You've got 12 minutes to do that.
Yeah,
It's
fucking well.
safe. It's not safe at that point. You like that's when you can get injured.
That's
Yeah.
100%. Because, like, Jack, when you go to Power Base and places like that, mate, they will be sitting around for 25 minutes warming up and doing mobility drills before they start throwing weight.
So yeah, you miss out on all of that, and that's fine for beginners. But yeah, like you say, I mean, I only do open gym now for that reason because you'll just end up hurting yourself.
So what is your protocol, Matt? Sorry, I'm terrible at interrupting people. So what are you actually doing?
Depends. So I'm one of them people where like I just when I was playing rugby, I was very, very regimented. Like my weights, because I was playing for two different teams. I was playing at uni and then playing for a club team as well. I was playing twice a week, so I was very locked in. I kind of had everything periodized, everything written up. So I was never kind of. I mean, ultimately, I was always overtraining, but I was kind of compensating quite heavily throughout the season. And then when we got a break in the sort of play, I'd fall apart for 2-3 weeks, and then trying to build myself back up again. So when I finished playing, which was like 6 years ago now,
Why did you stop playing?
I got in the whole time, and that was it. I got my job, and I was done. I was at university, and I couldn't risk. In my last year, I couldn't risk getting injured.
This is what I'm saying. I did rugby after college for a little bit, but then I was like, when I was doing all the strongman stuff, I was like, I don't like the idea of someone trying to maliciously trash my knees every Saturday. Yeah. There's so many uncontrollables in it, and I'm sound like a pussy, but I'm like,
it's true, and it's one of them things where like the higher level I played at, the impacts were bigger. Don't get me wrong, but you were being tackled by people that knew how to tackle, and then you knew how to take a tackle. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's dangerous in the Saturday league when you've got someone that just wants to come in and side boot you, and they just don't give a shit because they're back on the building site Monday morning.
Yeah, Dave the Builder is like angry at his wife, wants to come eye gouge you. Like, that.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I remember because obviously I grew up like sort of Derbyshire, Leicestershire. I used to play at Colville, and I wasn't quite 17 because I was still playing at Loughborough at the college and the academy there. And one of our coaches, he played at Colville. I was like, oh, come play with Colville. I remember going along to my first ever senior match. I was like 17 and a half, and I was playing in the back row. I literally played number 8. I picked the ball from the back of the scrum. I stepped round to pass the ball to the 10 and just got smacked in the mouth by this bloke. Like a fully blown going man smacked me in the mouth. I dropped the ball and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And the ref blew the whistle. He's like, knock on. I was like, the man's just punched me in the face. And he's like, no, you dropped the ball. And I was like, fucking hell, right. So that was like a real quick kind of whistle-stop tour introduction to sort of men's rugby.
Did you ever pick up any injuries from it? Did you ever have anything nasty where you were like, nah, that's enough?
Broke my foot. I've got poacher's thumb. I've torn the tendons in my hands.
What's poacher's thumb?
Poacher's thumb. I got told it's poacher's thumb. But basically, I tackled someone. I like dunk tackled someone when you could do it like spear tackling. Basically, you could pick somebody up above the horizontal and basically drop them on their head.
Yeah, I got a prolapse disc. Someone doing that to me.
Yeah, so karma got me as well, Pete. Don't worry. As I did it, my hand kind of slipped away from his shorts, and my thumb was like a thumb up. And as it impacted the ground, my thumb was still in a thumbs up position. That went in first, and all my weight and his weight went through my thumb. And it basically dislocated my thumb out the socket. And I then relocated it, but all the tendons and ligaments are basically mashed inside the joint. And I can't flex my thumb basically. And I've had that since I was 16. And if I got,
you see that video that was going around recently where the guy puts his knee back in?
Yes.
You just like you see it with like MMA. I forget what athlete it is. Constantly his shoulder keeps dislocating. I'm just like,
he just shrugs it back in. It's not good, and it's times like that. Like in hindsight now, I literally halfway through a game just didn't put it back in position properly. Like shook my hand because I panicked, thinking shit that really hurt, and my thumb's in a weird spot. And then taped my hand up and kept playing, and then never really. I went like 2 weeks later to the doctors because it was killing me. And he'd called it poacher's thumb. He gave me a reference to why it's called poacher's thumb, but I couldn't tell you what that meant. But yeah, I've got ailments. I've got a dodgy left ankle as well, so I have to have special thigh boots at work that zip up to protect my ankle.
I have to start doing that, I think, at some point. I've got a big what's the bag of blood? What's that called? I've got basically a bag of blood on the side of my
Hematoma,
foot.
is it?
Yeah, hematoma where I tore on. It was no heroics. I was doing a charity, collecting money for the firefighters charity, and I stepped off a curb at like 10:30 at night when we were coming back, and just rolled my ankle
Oh,
and ripped everything. It was like the most innocuous, like there was no heroic story behind it. And I had a boot on for ages. I chipped a tiny bit of bone as well. So now, because I didn't massage it and didn't sort it out, I've got like a sack of blood on the side of my. I've got right old lady legs as well because I had
yeah.
varicose vein surgery on both my legs. So my legs are horrific. It's like I'm a leper or something.
The legs are falling apart pretty much, aren't they?
My mate, mine are terrible. There's that. I've got a bloody hernia at the minute. Yeah, I've
What, on
had
your legs?
surgery on this hernia. It looks like a bollock just at the bottom of my stomach. And
Flipping heck.
I've never had a hernia before. I had piles before when I used to squat too much. But yeah, this hernia, I'm gonna have to address it at some point. Like I was supposed to ring somebody last week. I'm terrible, but like
It's never
I'm just not
good.
lifting loads basically because I'm like, I'll sort it out at some point. But I do need to sort it out because apparently if they burst, you're in real shit.
Mm.
So we're talking about not designed to lift heavy stuff. Like piles in your ass from squatting heavy probably ain't a good thing.
Oh mate, this was the days though, right? I would wear two pairs of compression leggings and
Jesus.
knee sleeves, and then
Oh,
wraps on top of my knees, and that's what caused the varicose veins because the build up in my calves and stuff like that. And this was, I think, 325 was like my heaviest ever squat,
Jesus
and it was
Christ.
just ridiculous. And I like you say, blowing blood vessels in your eyes, as well as all the stupid growth hormone and everything else. I was like Swiss cheese, sticking needles in myself. I was just a bloody addict. But anyway, yeah, this is the problem when I see Instagram and stuff like that. No one goes on and talks about the stories of, oh yeah, 3 years later, my body was just broken and I couldn't get an erection and I had to have loads of surgery. And you're like, where's that part of the story? Everyone just
They
kind of
kind of
polite.
glorify it a bit now, don't they? Really?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, and this is I've met like I used to train with Lawrence Charlie, trained with him a few times. I've met Eddie Hall a few times. I never met Hathor, but they've all gone Terry Hollands is honest about it. I met Terry Hollands a couple of times. Like they've all lost 7 stone, same as I have. I used to be 24 stone, and they're like, "Oh no, I've decided to get healthy." No, the doctor said to you, if you keep doing
Yeah.
that, you're going to die. Your arsehole's going to fall out, and all your tendons are going to snap. So you decided to take the advice and stop taking colossal amounts of drugs. And that's just honest, and that's okay, And you just made him. It's like this lad that I was talking to at the weekend. I was like, oh yeah, that was a mistake. I went down a rabbit hole there. That was a really stupid idea. But I feel like I made it through the narrow gap right at the end, just before.
Yeah.
I'm never pretend to be anything like him, but you see the horror stories of 7 times Mr.
Ronnie
Universe.
Coleman.
Yeah, Ronnie Coleman. Ronnie
Yeah.
Coleman can't fucking walk, can he? Jesus,
No.
he's like, God knows how many surgeries on his spine. But no, but it's great to hear that, Matt, because it's just honest. Had any big injuries on the golf course, Jack?
I was going to say, listening to you two there, I don't think I've got any major issues at all, to be
Now you're
honest.
smart about it though.
Yeah. He's
You've
got
actually
golfer's
always
elbow.
been really quiet and not all the time, obviously. You get a few drinks in you, but you've always been pretty in the background, just cracking on. And then every time I would meet you or see you, I'd be like, "What's Jack been doing? He's in shape."
Got a bit of, I think, a bit of tendonitis, like regularly get it in my forearms, elbows, stuff like that, or in my shoulders, but nothing that isn't manageable. But
How do
touch
you
wood.
manage it then? What's your training look like? Because this is what I mean. I think you train smarter, not harder. If not that you don't train hard, but do you know what I mean? Because you balanced it with things like golf. You'd lift only a couple of times a week. What would your training look like?
I don't know, I think maybe I am just lucky because I do. I would say I still train. I'm still overtraining most of the time,
Yeah.
especially now golf's out the window. I will train, 6 days a week and 7 days a week if I can.
Is that all? That can't all be weights though, surely, or is it? I don't
No,
know.
not now. Obviously, now I'm way more engine work than I ever used to. Like this last 2 years, I've never done more cardio in my life, apart from when I used to play hockey. But yeah, now all this sort of bodybuilding weights that's out the window. I couldn't go back to that. Now it's more just sort of engine work and
Has that been a conscious shift, or is it just because you're doing some more CrossFit?
yeah. So when the BFC 2022 went well, I thought obviously both of you will know from like the training for that, especially on your own in the 2 months, 3 months before it or whatever, like is pretty savage to do on your own. Like the extremes you have to take yourself to push yourself to like 90%, 100% max to really push the lactate threshold and all of that is quite hard to motivate yourself to do.
That's where CrossFit, I think, is great. That competitive aspect, especially on the cardio workouts. If it's not got a barbell in it and you're just doing like a row and a ski erg and a whatever, they're great ones.
Exactly. And you got people next to you like are putting themselves in that hole as well. And you're like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And I want to beat them as well. So it was kind of like a conscious decision to be like, well, I'll join a CrossFit gym and then that'll force me to do workouts that I don't want to do. Like, I mean, I never trained legs as of 2 years ago. I don't think I ever trained legs.
Really?
Really?
Well, you've got some killer calves on you, or is that just from the hockey days?
That probably just from
that just genetics.
Yeah.
It's the golf, that's all the hills.
Yeah, that's all the golf, yeah. Walking up them hills.
All the high heels, I think that's all that is.
Yes, exactly. Nice. Where's Jacqueline?
But now, like, and yeah, so it was like an excuse where you're gonna have to train legs, you're gonna have to do thrusters, you're gonna have to do squats, front squats, all of that sort of stuff.
I think front squats is a far smart. I mean, Matt, you've got the SSC, or strength conditioning, whatever it is. What's the argument for rear squats versus front squats?
The thing is, with both of them, you need a level of obviously you need a level of mobility throughout your body to do either of them.
Because some people are predisposed biomechanically to do one versus the other. They just don't realize it.
Yeah, it depends. So a front squat is always going to be harder than a back squat just because that front rack position, everyone's so stiff throughout their like lats and their chest, particularly.
Got to have the shoulder mobility for it, haven't you?
Yeah, and if you don't have that, and you can't even wrist mobility, because like Jack will know, when anything like front squatting or cleaning, you're not actually holding the bar with your hands or your arms. They're simply there to kind of add a little bit of support and maybe help aim yourself, but you're taking the weight in your shoulders.
Yeah.
And it's trying to like teach people that, because most people, and me included, if I've not warmed up properly or not done front squats for a long time, you assume that front rack position and it's fucking breaking your wrists because you're trying
well, that's if you do it like that, ready for like a push press. But when I was really massive, I just used to do front squats with my arms folded across the front, if you know what I mean, which is kind of like a cop out, but that's when you're only doing front. That's the bodybuilder front squat, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That's seriously uncomfortable as well. Like,
yeah.
I find that more comfortable though. The first time people ever do a push press
to rest the bar on.
That's what it was easy for me though. But then when you start moving into the push press realm, you have to get over catching a barbell on your collarbone, because if you haven't got that front delt to rest it on,
it's a world of pain. It's just harder. It's a more challenging position to get into. And if they look at you can break it down like biomechanically and everything else. Your front squat imposes a bit better of a stretch on like your quadriceps just because of the position you get yourself into. Mm-hmm. But the caveat to that is if you can maintain like an upright posture.
Yeah, we have to have the ankle mobility for it as well. Otherwise, you just can't get forward over it. The weight just pushes you backwards.
Exactly that, and you end up getting massive like forward trunk lean, and then you just collapse on yourself. And that's when again the front squat becomes so hard because you've not got the mobility to maintain that upright posture. The weight's in front of you, so you're even more unbalanced and it's just going to fall away from you. Whereas with a back squat, if you've got really bad mobility, you can still kind of force yourself into a position and you'll then essentially do like a back extension against the bar as you're coming out the hole. So you can kind of, probably the best was you can kind of cheat a back squat. You can't really cheat a front squat because you'll just...
I remember when I was first trying to transition from doing crazy heavyweights into front squats, and that's where I think I damaged one of my knees again even more, because I tried to drop out, or I tried to dump 150 kilo, because I was going to try, and I dumped it onto my knees because I didn't dump it far enough forward, and that really hurt. I had big bruises just across the top of my kneecaps for about 2 weeks, and it just felt even more stiff, and I was like... because again, like general safe powerlifting, especially with squatting, learn how to dump the bar, learn how to get out of it.
I mean, that's like the most important thing, really. Like when you're teaching any novice lifter, that was the one thing we always spoke about. Obviously, assuming the position, getting them comfortable in a certain position, but making sure they know how to ditch a bar. And if they can't ditch the bar for whatever reason, because the gym doesn't allow that, some gyms are like, first floor gyms, they don't want things being dropped.
That's what I think's been good about CrossFit as well. Because if you go into any pure, like in the 90s, if you wouldn't find a bloody powerlifting platform anywhere. Now you go into any pure gym and every CrossFit box, obviously, and there will be a powerlifting platform, and that's a game changer.
Massively. And that allows you to ditch it. And if you can't ditch it, make sure you set up a squat rack so that the pins are in place.
Yeah.
So if you ditch it, it catches it.
It gives you so much more confidence to actually try lifting as well, knowing that you can just throw the bar anywhere.
Yeah.
We've gone down a lovely rabbit hole, but I want to cycle back to the BFC for a second. So let's go through some of the categories, because someone we haven't spoken about is Simon Corvett. Simon must be very young. He just hasn't got the strength yet, bless him. And the nicest, I must say that with full respect, because he's fast. But I think like the haul and stuff, he's just, and like you boys race through the force entry machine, and he's just slower on those bits.
Did you get 2:26? Was that his time?
Yeah. That was Simon. Fucking, he got a good memory. But yeah, he was
not that big, is he? If he
no, he's tiny. I'll bet he's quite young, you know. I'll bet he's only in his early 20s, because you boys will be up and out of there before long. But again, when you move into the 30s, that's the thing about how long can you keep doing it as well. May Timber, or May Tomovold is actually what her name is, but she says May Timber is what's on her Instagram channels. But she came in with a 3-minute 9 seconds. Like, she was over a minute and a half faster than the next person in the female 40s. And she's massive on all of her Instagram and stuff like that. But the women's side of it's really growing, isn't it?
It is, which is great to see, to be fair. And I think that's just because I don't want to say there's a barrier to it, but some people see the British Firefighter Challenge, they think it's like invite only, or like it's some elite group of people and you have to be picked for it. The more like it grows and the more people see it, I think people realize that it's not all about winning, is it? What we're trying to do is raise money for charity, and I think it's a good challenge for anybody. And for me, doing that course and you're able to complete the course within that 6-minute time frame, for me, shows that you're fit and ready for the job, regardless of your gender. If you can do it in that time, like, we're doing the right thing. And I think the more female firefighters that see other firefighters compete, they're like, I want to have a go at that. I want to test myself. Maybe they want to prove themselves. I don't know. But I think it's all good stuff. It's encouraging the right things.
Whatever your standard is, whatever time you get, everyone's valued in that event and encouraged to do the best and celebrated. So that's what's so nice about it.
I love it. Do you think there's an aspect of the setup of the course as well? So what was your thoughts on the setup of the course this year? Because like the Welsh as an example, because it's similar, but obviously they didn't have the tower this year, or they didn't have the last 2 years, but they want to get it. But even the BFC, some years, the orientation of the kit, it is a quicker course, to be fair, isn't it? Sometimes it's just longer. The times this year were very fast, but I don't think it was an overly fast course. I think at the college it was even faster, to be honest, because everything was a little bit closer together.
I've looked at it. It doesn't seem much different to last year.
The one thing like me and Jack are talking about was like the Kaiser this year.
Yeah.
You watch some people do it, like we talked about Aaron Childs earlier, bless him. It took him like 21 hits to shift that Kaiser. And it really, like, last year I watched back some videos of like Hull and the Kaiser. People doing like 6-7 hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, or to be fair, and I'm not going to say which one it was, but one of them was definitely quicker than the other one this year. You can see it when they're resetting it. They would just push it with a foot and it would slip all the way down. And it wasn't the same on the other side. And this is the thing, because one of the sides really got fucked up by one of the competitors. I forget who it was. It doesn't matter who it was. But they banged a shit out of the steel. And I think they put a few little divots on, I forget whichever side it was. It was the side that was on the left. But this is the thing that people don't appreciate about it as well, is there's a big factor when those yellow T-shirts are resetting. And I don't think either of you actually did it, but when you see people like Joachim and stuff like that, they go and check the course when it's their turn, and they're like, check a few bits, and that's where there's some extra marginal gains, I think. Because that Kaiser, like you say, if the one hammer's not as hot as the other hammer, that can be a real marginal gain, I reckon, that one.
The Kaiser's inconsistent, isn't it? And the Europeans weren't happy about it either, because like it does change, doing 7 hits on that Kaiser or doing 14, 15 completely changes the dynamic of the race.
100%.
What you're prepared for. But I think next year they were saying they might be getting the piston ones, which are way fairer and is literally on your strength and technique at that point. So that's a positive change, I think.
Because you see some of the other ones across the world, and some of them move so incredibly quick. I think you could just, you give it a couple of hits, and you see some of the American ones. They so slick. They're kind of covered in grease.
It's like four. It's like for the show, isn't it? 4 3 hits, flies off the back. Everyone
Yeah, it
loves it.
literally flies off the back.
It's great.
So neither of you have ever done the TFA. Have you ever done Firefit? Because Firefit's only over the pond. Firefit, they always held, well, they do it all over the world. But
I've been
I've
to
been to the
Firefit,
one. You've been to Firefit.
to a Firefit, yeah.
What'd you make of it?
I really liked it. It was great. It's same sort of vibe as BFC. Everyone's so nice and friendly. It was a German one we went to. I think I forgot where it was
They
now.
use the rescue Randys, though, don't they?
Yeah, what are they? 85 kilos.
Yeah. What's your thought process on that? Getting into the firefighter general fitness side of stuff? Because obviously, I've said many times on the podcast, I work in a training department, and the heaviest casualties we have are 55 kilos, and I think it's an absolute joke. Because how many people get stuck in fires that weigh less than 10 stone? Fucking
Not
nobody.
many.
Do you know what I mean? It's the heifers that, bless them, that get stuck in fires, isn't it? So I like the fact that we have a 90 kilo, but then some people say, oh, but then it becomes elitist because with the greatest respect, either weaker casualties or typically sometimes female firefighters will struggle with a 90 kilo casualty. But I'm like, no, it'll be slower. That's all it'll be.
Yeah, it's graft.
Yeah, it's just graft. And it'll encourage you
Yeah.
to. How heavy do you think they should be? If you said, like, what should a firefighter be able to do?
Well, I could be very elitist here, but I think the average. They say the average man's like 85 k's now, isn't it, or something like that. So
Yeah,
it's got. I think if it reflected that, that'd be really quite good because that means we're reflecting the average weight. Like 70 k's nowadays is probably a very average. Well, I wouldn't say average. I
it's
say
the
that's below.
expanding waistline of the UK person. I don't think it's elitist. I think it is like otherwise you're setting people up to fail. You know, sometimes
Yeah,
I see BA drills and someone's picking up an adult and then holding a baby in the other hand. I'm like, you'd never do that in a job. You could never do
no,
that. You no chance.
I think you should strive to be able to move the heaviest casualty possible that you could think you could personally achieve. So
yeah,
whether that means you need to get yourself in the gym and work harder, that might be the case.
Hmm.
Because for some people, maybe it might be unrealistic to be able to move a 90 kilo casualty,
Hmm.
but you might be only moving a 60 at the moment. Actually, if you put some work in, you might be able to move 80.
Yeah, and I think there's like with casualty handling straps and all that sort of jazz. There's a lot of mechanical advantage that you can start playing with. Like I just do weighted tire drags and stuff like that. The hoses
yeah,
that you strap over your shoulders, and like there's loads of sleds in gyms and stuff now. You just got to care enough to do it because walking. But I had to do a lot of this rehab work with my knee, walking backwards. Have you seen knees over toes guy on
yeah. I was
Instagram?
about to say knees of a toe. Yeah,
He's fantastic, and he does a lot of that walking backwards sled walks. And some people do it on a not a cross trainer, bloody what's it at the gym
treadmill, isn't it?
treadmill and break the fucking treadmill. But
Yeah,
yeah, if you put the money into getting a sled or something like that, that's a real game changer, and it does build an entirely different set of muscles, sort of, than you'd get from a tip like I just need to do more squats. So that's probably not going to help you with the drag very much, to be honest with you.
no. I think part of the problem is when I did my dissertation, I did it on the fire service, and my dissertation was all about looking at like the relationship between VO2 max, air consumption, body composition, and a little bit on gender. But in the people I tested, I could only get male firefighters tests, so I kind of had to come away from the female side to it. But a lot of the papers that I read to sort of formulate my ideas and the discussions within it, a lot of the papers they all say in terms of they look review firefighting. A lot of them were like naval firefighting ones. There were some done at the fire service college, and essentially the long and short of it is they said that for firefighting duties, for search and rescue, anything firefighting, upper body strength is paramount. It is more important than lower body strength because of like hauling hose, lifting stuff, dragging casualties. Obviously, leg strength is still important, but if you're jacked up top, you can compensate quite well for the most of the things that we do opposed to your legs. And then when it sort of comes into gender, we know that most men are anatomy. We have larger shoulders,
Yeah,
typically have bigger bones. Our structure is completely different. So our potential to get muscle mass, particularly in our upper half of our body, is we're biologically at an advantage. And that's not to say that women can't do it. It's just that the average man probably has to work less in
yeah.
terms of how hard they have to train versus what the counterpart female have to do. And again, that's not to say that they can't do it. It's just that
That's a
it's
compliment for me. It's like
yeah,
you've definitely worked harder than some of the
yeah,
males to get here.
100%.
But that's what frustrates me when I see, like, I like the fact some services rate they'd have a bleep test for 8.8, but then they're like, we can do that, or you can do the chest to step test. I'm like, they're not the fucking same. 8.8 on a bleep test is a shift for a lot of people, to be brutally honest with you.
Yeah,
Especially when I think the police's fitness test is 5 on the bleep test. But again, a lot of it, I was listening to a service the other day or I was talking to a service who started doing it on the bike, their annual fitness test you can do on the bike. And I'm like, I get it's fitness, but it's not like for like. I know the BFC team were looking at trying to get this qualified. How do you think the BFC would be if you could complete the BFC in under 6 minutes? Should that be able to pass you for your annual fitness test?
I think there'll be a lot of people that won't be passing that.
That's what I'm saying. But it's
yeah,
more like for like. I like the National Fireground test as well.
yeah.
That's more. It's more reflective of the job. All this shit
That
where it's cardio based for your legs. I'm like, that's not the longevity, because a key metric of longevity for men is just, can you sustain muscle mass? And I'm not talking bodybuilders. I'm talking just sustaining physical mass and mobility. And people say, oh, I just need to do more running. No, probably not. Do you know what I mean? It's the low hanging fruit is just do a little bit of functional strength work.
I think the 11-11 test should probably be our go-to. I don't think the step test, or the chest to treadmill test should be our go-to test. Yes, it's easy. Yes, there's no like resetting of a course, but our job's like role specific, and the fire gun output test covers pretty much everything we can do in the kit at the conditions of which we work.
Hmm.
So if you can't do it in 11 minutes 11 seconds, then that's very clearly you're not fit
Yeah.
enough to do the job. And that's again,
Firefighting is interval training. It's lifting and moving. That's
oh yeah, it
firefighting.
is.
Interval training, lifting and moving with spurts of, dragging and repositioning hose at a job, lifting stuff and carrying it up a high rise. That's a lot of what you're doing.
It's graft. And what gets me is I'm not sure about your brigades, but in my brigade you can essentially fail your chest treadmill test. But say, example, you reach like what they call a grade 2 pass, which is like 10 minutes, I think. You're non-BA, so you can't wear BA, but you can still ride the pump. So if you're a driver, you can still drive, you can still be fifth or sixth and be a runner. But what makes me laugh is that when you're driving, the first like 20 minutes of a job, if you're by yourself in the sticks, it's fucking way harder.
You're shipping a hydrant and fucking running everywhere.
Yeah.
So the people, the
That's
OIC and the BA are
hardest
just
roles,
standing about for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, it's the hardest place to be.
I do worry that we're speeding towards a cliff in terms of like raising the age now, firefighters till they're 65. And I'm like, okay, now you see some people in their 30s now, you're like, geez, I always say this when I'm standing in the playground, like not doing anything wrong. When I'm picking my kid up from school, and, I'm not just like hanging out there on my days off. And I'm looking around at people I went to school with, and I'm like, dude, you're in your early 30s. What the fuck have you done to yourself? You're like a melted wheelie bin. What have you done to your body? And not all firefighters are that bad, but I do think, I mean, do you guys, how realistic is it? Do you think that some of these firefighters are going to, and we're not, I know it sounds so elitist. I'm no better than anybody. My body's speeding towards its own cliff, but like, do you think we're going to run into a big surprise when people hit their 50s and like, they're just going to have to opt out the job, or what are we going to do about it?
I do think the services should maybe provide a better, like have better fitness departments for supporting, the fact that the age has gone up. Because it doesn't seem like you get any advice fitness-wise, does it, in terms of how to improve and how to maintain your fitness? It's all off your own back, isn't it? They do provide gyms, obviously, and time to train, but I think in America, like you have PTs, don't you, and like circuit sessions that you like are compulsory and things like that. I do think it would be good for that sort of thing to be introduced into the fire service culture in the UK.
I think it's it feels like a personal attack is the problem with something like that. Like if you fail somebody because they're not good at incident command or they're not good at pump operating, it's like a professional reflection, and it's a very sort of systematic procedure or development plan for you to get better at that thing. But if you're saying to somebody, dude, you're not very fit, it's like a personal attack on their own personal standards and their own personal discipline. It can get quite personal is the problem, I think, when stuff like that, because you're not really looking after yourself very well.
The thing is, the caveat to that is that it's no surprise that the jobs we do is difficult. We had to pass a fitness test to get in the job. The expectation is that, if your career is 30 years or 10 years, every year in that job, you can still pass the same test you ended in. And don't get me wrong, age has a massive effect. But the reasons why, like, your bleep test for the fire service, like in the 90s and the 2000s, was like 10.6, whatever it was because they factored in any decline in VO2 max due to age. We know we lose about 10% of your VO2 max every decade. So that's why it was higher, so that you had people that were like very physically fit, very capable, so you could allow for that natural decay.
Yeah.
Our issue is now we test for the bare minimum. So there's people that are like 18, 19, 20 joining the job, and they're at the bare minimum. Like, you shouldn't have to train to pass the fitness test at work. You know, you should join the job and maintain that level. And at any single point, someone would rock up and say, right, today, Pete,
that always pisses me off. People, you turn up to do it, or some people turn up to do it, and they're like, oh, well, I didn't get a heads up that my fitness test was today. It shouldn't fucking matter when you should be able to rock up and do it any day.
I think that's maybe a cultural thing. So obviously, annual fitness testing wasn't always a thing, and obviously it's come in, and rightly so. But it's for me, that's the professional pride again, that you've joined a physical job where, in reality, in the worst kind of days, we're having to put ourselves at risk. You want to make sure that you've done everything you can to make sure that you can be effective and be an effective part of that team. And sometimes, I mean, I get pigeonholed quite a lot for like breaking in doors or carrying stuff because I'm relatively strong. So that's kind of easy for me to do. In terms of like dexterity and stuff, pretty shit. Not the best. So
you've got a gammy thumb, haven't you?
Yeah, gammy thumb. You got bad hands. But that's, again, sometimes I think you kind of get on watches, we play to people's strengths. And I think that's the right way to be. Don't get me wrong. But I think sometimes people only stick to their strengths and don't work on their weaknesses. And sometimes you can have someone that's like a real cardio bunny, doesn't touch the weights. And likewise, you can have someone that's massive into the weights, doesn't touch.
In the same way, you have people that hide behind the theoretical as well. Some people that are real fantastic subject matter experts, and that's great. But I don't think that also gives you an excuse to slack off on the physical side of it. And that's like when I think of the podcast sometimes, like the beauty of it, it's an audio thing. I'm not a tremendously fit person, but I'm probably fitter than the average person. But I always say to people, don't just rest on your laurels of saying, oh, I'm really fit, so I don't need to be good at the job. But equally, don't just say, I'm a freaking fire behavior expert, that's why I can get away with being a fat mess. I'm like, well, no, I don't think that's actually the case, mate. You know, where's your personal? And I love that when I meet a chief, like the chief of Staffordshire, Rob, or I can't remember his sorry name, Rob something. Yeah. He's a machine. He's great. You know, he does the marathon. And part of it for him is he's like, well, I'm asking my firefighter, I don't need to do this every year. And not like, oh, I don't need to do this, I'm doing it for you. He's not saying that, but I'm like, he's like, I should be leading by example. And I think that's a big aspect. You know, he's in his 50s or something now. And when we go around with the BFC, and sometimes we invite the chiefs and the deps to get involved, some of them do. And like Manchester, that they all had a crack. But some of them would have a bloody heart attack if they tried to do it.
Yeah, I think it was great to see like Humberside and Manchester do it. I think if you're in that brigade and you've seen your chief get involved and all your SLT, I think that kind of that puts out a good statement to me that sort of shows that they're still capable of doing the job and they appreciate the difficulty of the job. Do you know what I mean? They want to get involved, and I think that's I love that. That'd be a massive like morale boost for me. Having them sort of get involved.
It's authenticity, isn't it? Look, I want to be super respectful of time because it's rocking on. But I wanted to leave and pose the impossible question. Tips and tricks. Let's start first and foremost, like people joining the job. Tips and tricks, because you boys will know as much as me. We are hemorrhaging experience and skill set, which sucks, but we're also recruiting massively. We're hitting that sort of 35-year, 30-year cycle where loads of people are retiring, loads of people are getting hired. So for anyone looking to join the fire service, what's your top three? Just top three training tips to throw into a week.
Is this fitness tips?
Yeah, well, whatever, mate. No, take the question however you like. What did you do to get into it? Because both your dads were in for long careers. So you've kind of got like a couple of layers of advice. What things served you best, very from a fitness and a prep consideration?
Go on, Jack.
You
first.
You definitely need to be good at interviews for starters. That's the first thing you have to be good at.
You need to be able to tell a book of lies. Is that what it is? I rescued 27 cats whilst I was also raising money for children in Ethiopia. And yeah, I love diversity and inclusion. I've got loads of friends with no legs and speak different languages.
Yeah, I think a good first tip is definitely whatever fire service you're looking to join is definitely familiarize yourselves with their core values and their sort of plan. They'll normally have a plan and value system.
I think that's a great piece of advice because it's publicly available, and it astonishes me when I do interviews. I say, "Oh, tell us something about the fire service." No, I don't know anything. For fuck's sake, it's all on the internet. Just go and look at it and memorize the values, memorize the core code of ethics, whatever it is for your service. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously make sure you've got a good base level of fitness, and that I would say personally, and this is how I'd personally feel about it, same as like Matt was saying about the sort of personal pride and being capable of doing the job for a long period of time. If you want to be interested in the fire service, make sure you are interested in, looking after your fitness, because it's a long career and it is a physical job. Don't think you're just going to be coming and fitting smoke alarms and doing talks at schools. Even though we do a lot of that, make sure you are willing to look after your fitness as well.
That's a great aspect. What you got, Matt?
I'm going to try not copy Jack fully, but yeah, he makes like the interview stuff. I think, like Jack said, knowing the core values, kind of having some examples when you might have demonstrated them. That's what ultimately comes down to, like the physicals and that. If you can get yourself physically fit, however that is, if you play a sport, if you go to a gym, you do CrossFit, as long as you know you can pass, or you can pass the tests and you're as physically fit as you can be, and you can turn up on the day and have no dramas, then that's fantastic. But I think a lot of people that I know, I had mates that have tried to join the brigades. One of my best mates, he's in Dorset and Wilts at the moment, and I kept saying to him, physically fit bloke, I said, you need to really focus on the interview prep, because you're more than capable of passing them tests. You'll be all over that, no problems at all. But if you can't pass the interview, you're not going to get a job. So no matter how
That's
fit
where
you
the
are,
lottery is, isn't it? That's where the massive drop off. Nothing more frustrating than when, like you say, you've got a mate, and we've all got loads of them that have been like, "Oh no, I didn't get through the thing," and you're like, "You'd make a great firefighter."
yeah. So I think it's just interview prep, practicing getting asked questions, practicing answering questions. It sounds daft, but it's learning how to respond to questions and just having examples of when you've done things. There'll be probably plenty of times where you've I don't know, the whole PQA sort of stuff they used to have. There's plenty of times you've been in situations where it's been stressful or worked as the team, but it's just having the time to sit down and think about when them times were, and then being able to tell that story.
Telling that story is an absolute key. And as corny as it sounds, and this is not a bloody motivational podcast, but it's like, just learn the STAR method. Do you know what I mean? Situation, task, action, results. What did you do about it? What were your reflections? Just write it down, record it on a dictaphone, play it back to you. Get your missus or your fella or your dad or your neighbor to ask you the question and practice. Just get over yourself and be willing to look a bit stupid and just practice telling the story.
Yeah, I think that's what it also, that's the key thing. It's that practice makes permanent. I don't like practice makes perfect, because we're all fallible. You can make a mistake at any point, but if the more you practice, the more we embed things being done in a sort of correct way. And same sort of things Jack said, like, get involved in this job because you want to do the job. I absolutely love the fire service, everything about it. Like, I am that corny person. I'm completely, when you talk about being like romantically in love with the job, Pete, that is me all over to the nth degree.
Well, that fucking sad. You haven't started a podcast yet.
Yeah,
that's when you really need to get a life.
If you stick it out the full 40 years, it's a long time. And I think you've got to be committed to the job. The job is going to change. And that also comes down to like your longevity in terms of keeping yourself like fit and active and keeping yourself interested in the job. You speak to some people where like the 20 years in, and that's all you get, the 20-year kind of like lull where you've been so far in.
You do.
Time is not far away, but it's like, it's 10 years away. I'm kind of like, things have changed, this and that. I think it's just keeping yourself like proactive and engaged.
I think you've got to keep moving around. You've got to keep, I know, Jack, like, we won't say where you're from or what you do, but like, you changed services recently. And I always said to people, like, change stations, change watches. Doesn't mean you hate anybody. Just means keep things a little bit fresh. It's a bigger place than just one brigade or one service, because you will get bored. You will get stale. We're human beings.
I think as well on what you've just said there, Matt, as well, on, you know, making sure that you do actually love the job and stuff. Before you even do apply, get yourself down to a station, speak to firefighters, actually ask what we do, what's the day-to-day routines, like see if it's actually something you would like to do, because you might have an idea of what the fire service do, running into fires, saving cats from trees, but there is a lot that we have to do, and some people do join and then they don't realize that until they get in, and then you can see they weren't expecting some of the things that they have to do.
100%.
So yeah.
And if you can respect that bit and you can learn that bit, it's still an absolute scream. The work-life balance is absolutely incredible. Personally think. I think it suits families. The wage isn't amazing, but you get time off. So if you want to have a side hustle, you want to have another project, you can still do both of them. You're not grinding a 9 to 5 and trying to fit your life into the 2 and a bit days that you have at the weekend. You've got a massive amount of flexibility. And you just get to meet and every day, you know, you have an absolute feast. You have an absolute feast. You're riding around with your mates on a big red toy. I just think it's an absolute scream.
It's the best job in the world, bar being an astronaut or a fast jet pilot. It's just that's sort of the ratio for me. But yeah, bang on what Jack said. You know, get involved and know what the job is, because I think sometimes when recruitment comes around, sometimes people get sold a bit of a false dream.
Yeah, they do.
And I think that's disingenuous by like recruitment teams in the service, because we mentioned core values, and this is going to start real corny, but we mention all these things about integrity, accountability, you know, fill in the blank. But if we're not telling people what the job actually entails, like you're going to go and see some pretty nasty stuff. You're going to be asked to do some, like, you know, pick up their bodies or move their bodies, or it ain't, you know, it's not. And great
it's going to be shit. It's going to be 3 a.m. in the middle of a stinking field. And it's not, you know, there ain't going to be public clapping you. It's going to stink. No. You're going to be not in the mood. You're going to be tired. You've had 2 rough days on shift. You missed lunch this afternoon. You know, you're in cold stuff because your kit was wet from the previous job. And that's the reality of it. No one's there giving you high fives, tea and medals. It's going to be crap sometimes. And that's why the whole podcast kind of exists, because sometimes you see some of this corporate BS and I'm like, that's just, no one's interested. Do you know what I mean? It sounds like you're trying to pitch someone like they're going to cure cancer. It's an amazing job, but let's be realistic about some of the aspects of it that aren't perfect sometimes.
Yeah, it's like booking a holiday and you get there and it's not built yet.
Yeah. You see the picture of the burger and you're like, oh, it doesn't taste like that shit. But it's still a scream.
So yeah, I think it's, you know, we've got to be prepared for that. Like we say, response is the 1%. But that's kind of what the premise of our entire job is. You know, we go back historically, that 1% is 100% of what people expect us to do.
I always say that to people about training as well, because military have got some amazing advertisements. But if you actually look at the stats, right, I think it's 12% of the military ever get deployed. And of that 12%, only 4% ever see contact, because of that 12%, a lot of them are like admin and chefs and logistics and intelligence and blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you're a firefighter, you genuinely actually will be doing the job. And even though the jobs have hemorrhaged and like we're not as busy as we used to be, you still go out every tour. You might even go out every single shift. You know, you might be at a station where you're really busy. Do you know what I mean? So in comparison to, and I love the military and I thank them for everything they do, but it's like we still actually do the thing. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I encourage people to stay good at that, stay proficient, you know, stay operationally ready, because you'll still be far busier than a lot of other services. My brother-in-law is a paramedic and he has to sit for 8 hours trying to book a casualty in an A&E because they've got blood in their poo. Do you know what I mean? You won't be doing that. We go to a job, we do the fun bit, and then we go, I'll hand over to the police now. There's nothing interesting to do, so I'm going to go.
I mean, I did tell your brother-in-law to keep that private, Pete. Obviously, he told you about that.
Well, mate, I thought you were going to bring it up. You claimed your eyes, but I was like, he's not saying about the blood in the...
That's bad. But yeah, you're right. I think, again, that circles back to that 1% is where we need to be ready to do the 1%, so being as fit and able as possible and having pride in being that person.
Beautiful. Cheers, fellas. I want to be really respectful of your time. Send my love to all your families. Send my love to the boys and girls on watch. And I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much.
Cheers, dude.
Hey folks, just wanted to jump back in. I hope you enjoyed that chat with Jack and Matt. I absolutely loved it. You know, I spend so much time with incredible people, just like these two guys. And I always feel kind of selfish that people don't get an opportunity to meet them. They don't get those insights into the reason these people join the job, what their day-to-day life is. And honestly, they're kind of behind the scenes, the kind of disciplines that it takes to achieve the incredible things that both these individuals have achieved. So if this insight into either the world of firefighting, but certainly into the world of firefighter challenges has piqued your interest, the next venue for the British Firefighter Challenge is in Liverpool, Pierhead. It's an absolutely beautiful location. I went to see it only just recently. It is underneath the iconic Liver building, famous for so many great films. It's also being co-hosted with Pride. So there'll be plenty of reasons for competitors, spectators, family, friends to take the journey north next year. Now, if you are a firefighter, past, present, or about to retire, or just join the service, if you want to compete, if you want to take part, you'll be able to register your interest on the website now, and then you will get first dibs on when the registration comes out. Registration comes out 1st of January. So I know you will be mad crazy busy when January rolls around, especially on the 1st. It took just 3 days to sell all 300 places this year, so expect them to go fast. The best way to stay updated is to sign up on the website. We have put the links in the note for this podcast. This is for absolutely everybody. You'll be overwhelmed with the kind of support that you get there. And so much of this is just about you versus you. I'm one of those corny guys. I've got it tattooed in the middle of my back. And I'm going to paraphrase and probably ruin one of my favorite quotes from Socrates. That is, no person has the right to be an amateur in the matter of physical training. It is a shame for a person to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which their body is capable. You have that same capacity. The best version of you is the best version of you. Your 100% is your 100%, and you will know what that is. So I strongly encourage you to come and participate. I strongly encourage you to come and get amongst it. If you're thinking about joining the fire service, come and attend. Come and meet the families, come and meet the friends. Get to know people, ask those questions. If you are a serving firefighter or you've retired, come and have a go. Come and push yourself. Maybe 2024 is the year for you. The podcast will be there once again. Myself and Sarah will be there with the action, kicking ass, taking names, supporting all the incredible athletes. If you want a chance to meet the podcast, if you want to come and say hi, we'd love to meet you. We'd love to be there. I would love to be announcing your name coming out onto the course in 2024. Thanks for coming back and listening in, and we'll see you next time. Firefighters podcast is put together to develop, inspire, and hopefully even motivate those individuals who have chosen to serve our communities and be part of the first responder family. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield. If you have enjoyed today's episode and you want to see the podcast continue, please head over to our Patreon page where you can support the ongoing efforts of the podcast. Please hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on whatever platform you're listening to. Please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.